Amidst the vast desert, a group of brutal robbers has placed giant jet engines. The machine blasts up a fierce artificial sandstorm. Their goal is to stop the convoy undergoing an emergency evacuation, carrying hundreds of lives to the safe green zone. So, what is the conspiracy behind their actions? Will they achieve their intentions? Action movie fans, please follow along with me. The story begins when an oil refinery in the Middle East is repeatedly attacked by a group of rebellious insurgents. Within just 1 week, the refinery suffered 2 attacks. Their main purpose is to force the refinery to hand over control. But messing with America's interests isn't easy. A special forces team is quickly dispatched to rescue those still trapped there. The commander of the special forces team is Feng. Here, Feng meets Professor Chong, the refinery's director. She quickly reports the situation and states that nearly 500 people, including staff and children, are currently waiting to be evacuated. Upon arrival, Feng immediately organizes his forces and gets everyone onto vehicles, determined to leave the danger zone as soon as possible. In another development, Chris, a muscular guy, is relaxing by practicing golf alone on his pickup truck. Suddenly, a car carrying a few rather aggressive-looking guys appears. The first one to get out is Henry, Chris's younger brother. He has come to deliver the money share from the previous job they just completed. While chatting, Chris excitedly suggests a nickname for his brother's crew, although no one seems thrilled with the name he proposes. After handing over the money, Henry doesn't leave immediately, but lingers to persuade Chris to join a new job. This time, the reward is 5 times higher than before. However, the more money, the greater the danger. This mission is to kidnap Professor Chong, who is about to be rescued by an agent from the insurgent-occupied zone. The leader of the rescue mission is the very person who caused Henry's team to fail a previous mission, capturing 5 of their men. This time, they must cross the desert of death to reach the green zone, a rare safe haven in the chaotic region. After hearing the plan, Chris realizes this is not something to be taken lightly. He warns Henry not to risk his life because this job is too dangerous. Although the amount is huge, for Chris, who already has enough money to retire, he bluntly refuses. Unable to persuade him, Henry and his crew have no choice but to leave. After refusing his brother's job, Chris returns to his beloved village. At this time, his close friend, Owen, a plumber, is checking the water supply system for the village. The situation is extremely tense. The entire village is facing a severe water shortage. The reason is that a factory has built a dam blocking the water source, cutting off the flow. If this situation persists, life in the village will be threatened. Owen says, in a place near the desert like this, if oil is the most precious thing, then water is surely second. He also reveals that there is a way to restore the water flow by bribing the relevant party, but the price is up to $100,000. Hearing this, Chris is stunned. He once declared he didn't need money, but now he clearly sees the power of money and the harshness of reality. Even with money, the amount he has is nothing compared to that enormous figure. That evening, a woman asks him, "How can we possibly earn that much money?" Chris just stays silent, then replies, "Don't worry, leave it to me." But inwardly, he is also troubled, not knowing where to start. On the other side, Feng has completed the preparations. The plan is to evacuate in 2 waves, one departing at 9 a.m., the other at 4 p.m. After carefully considering the weather conditions and routes, they realize there is only one possible road, the area nicknamed the Death Zone. The journey is expected to last about 8 hours. The next morning, when everything is ready, the convoy of 10 vehicles begins its journey. Feng drives the lead vehicle. Each vehicle is equipped with a radio to maintain communication. In the air, 2 helicopters circle overhead to monitor and protect the convoy. Initially, the journey goes quite smoothly. Feng is arranged to travel with his daughter, about whom he always carries a heavy sense of guilt. However, the atmosphere inside the car is heavy. The girl constantly reproaches her father for his years of absence, neglecting her and her mother, even when her mother fell ill. In her eyes, Feng is a good soldier but a failed father. As the vehicle enters the death zone, Feng reminds his daughter to fasten her seatbelt as a precaution. After traveling some distance, they see 2 cars blocking the road. Feng's daughter thinks it's a warning about mines, but with his extensive experience, Feng immediately recognizes it's a trap. He explains, "They want us to stop, then they'll rush out from both sides. If we leave the vehicle, they'll attack." Feng doesn't stop the car, he drives straight forward. As predicted, the 2 blocking cars were rigged with bombs. Mines explode consecutively, turning the entire stretch of road into a sea of fire obscured by smoke and dust. Fortunately, with his seasoned command experience, Feng managed the situation in time, leading the convoy through the dangerous area without serious losses. However, upon reaching the canyon ahead, the entire convoy suddenly encounters a fierce sandstorm. The strange thing is, according to the weather forecast, there were absolutely no signs of a storm today. Feng senses something unusual, but if they stop to wait for the storm to pass, they will miss the evacuation schedule. Anyway, forecasts aren't always accurate. He decides to continue moving forward. The further they go, the stronger the storm becomes, with sand-laden winds blowing fiercely, reducing visibility to almost zero. The drivers are forced to turn on their headlights to navigate. However, the communication system between the vehicles starts malfunctioning. Just then, Feng's daughter sitting beside him glimpses a black object flash past in the sand screen. At that very moment, 4 dirt bikes and an armored vehicle suddenly appear, closing in on the rescue convoy. One of them approaches vehicle number 8, the one carrying Professor Chang. They shoot a rope with an iron hook onto the front of the vehicle and immediately attach a ladder to climb onto the roof. They detonate explosives on the dirt bike, causing it to explode, fly up, and crash violently into the front of the vehicle. One man smashes the front windshield, rappels down, and breaks into the vehicle. The other kicks open the back door and rushes in. In an instant, all passengers inside are subdued. Simultaneously, vehicle number 11 is approached by 2 other men in a similar manner. A female agent rushes to fight back. After a few blows, she is kicked out of the vehicle through the window. Vehicles number 8 and 11 are officially hijacked. At this point, Feng and the remaining vehicles are completely unaware of what has happened. Only when they emerge from the storm zone do they discover the 2 vehicles are missing. The communication system is also restored by now. Feng immediately orders the 2 monitoring helicopters to land urgently. He has the convoy stop, while he and his daughter board a helicopter to search for traces of the missing vehicles. His daughter seems reluctant, but Feng explains, "You know this area's terrain better than anyone. Dad needs you to navigate." Meanwhile, the 2 hijacked vehicles are taken in different directions. Those inside are all hooded with black bags, taken away like prisoners of war. And now, the mastermind behind the kidnapping is officially revealed. It is Chris and his crew. While on the helicopter, Feng realizes that the storm his convoy encountered earlier was not a natural phenomenon as he suspected, but an artificial storm created by the kidnapping group. They used high-power blowers to create a gale-force wind to hinder pursuit. Flying a bit further, Feng spots Chris's convoy moving on the highway. Immediately, a fierce firefight breaks out. From the helicopter, Agent Feng fires down below. Henry and his crew return fire fiercely. An off-road vehicle in Chris's group is hit and explodes violently. Henry quickly directs another vehicle to lead the way to continue their escape. Thanks to having hostages on board, Chris's group temporarily escapes the helicopter's fire. However, this group is forced to stop and engage directly. Even so, their light weapons are completely outmatched by the heavy firepower from the helicopter. In the critical moment, one of Chris's support vehicles appears, carrying a cannon. Facing this terrifying firepower, Feng's helicopter is forced to withdraw to avoid heavy damage. Vehicle number 11, not being in the attack zone, is released by Chris's group. Feng's unit receives orders to immediately return to the convoy's starting point. Feng follows by helicopter to the location where vehicle number 8 was abandoned in the desert. He throws down a rope, climbs down to the vehicle alone. Although worried about her father's safety, Feng's daughter doesn't stop him, only telling him to be careful. His daughter's sentiment seems to give Feng renewed strength. Upon reaching the vehicle, Feng receives news that 5 members of his group, including Professor Chang and the manager, have been kidnapped. As for Chris, after luckily escaping the firefight and returning to base, he starts to suspect and questions his brother Henry about who hired them. Just then, Owen, the mastermind, appears. It turns out he is the one who hired Chris's group and is also the insurgent leader who previously attacked Professor Chang's refinery. In a private conversation with Chris, Owen reveals that he has worked in this region for many years but still lives in poverty, while others got rich quickly from oil. He wants to use this incident to change the situation, eliminate people like Chang, and return everything to people like him. Owen promises that if Chris just helps shake off the Chinese agent pursuing Professor Chang, he will live prosperously later. However, Chris is not convinced. He just wants to receive payment after completing the mission. Owen's or Professor Chang's affairs are irrelevant. Seeing this, Henry comes to persuade his brother, suggesting he is repeating their father's cowardice from the past. But Chris remains determined to leave and tells Henry to bring the money back to the village at exactly 4 o'clock. Henry turns to convince Owen that they can still capture Feng without Chris. But Owen knows well that Feng is not easy to deal with. Without Chris, the plan is unlikely to succeed. Seizing the opportunity, Owen ruthlessly kills Henry and orders his men to take the body to the oil refinery, staging the scene as if Henry was killed by the Chinese agent. His purpose is to make Chris resent Feng, thereby using him to kill the agent, killing two birds with one stone. On his way back to the village, Chris is accidentally spotted by Feng's helicopter. Feng intends to follow, but the helicopter is low on fuel, so he is forced to land and walk to the village. Arriving back at the village, Chris feels betrayed. He angrily punches a mirror, feeling helpless. By 4 o'clock, still seeing no sign of Henry bringing the money as promised, Chris starts getting impatient. To kill time, he goes outside to play ball with a boy from the village. At the same time, Feng has reached the village gate but doesn't dare enter yet. Suddenly, the ball Chris is playing with hits Feng's leg. Looking at his attire and appearance, Chris quickly realizes Feng is the Chinese agent Owen mentioned. However, he maintains a nonchalant demeanor as if he knows nothing. After Feng leaves the village, Chris waits and waits, but still doesn't see his brother bring the money as arranged. Sensing something is wrong, he decides to return to Owen's base to find Henry and get his payment. Feng notices Chris's strange behavior and borrows his off-road vehicle to follow him. Chris reaches the base only to find it abandoned, completely deserted. Going deeper inside, he is stunned silent upon seeing his brother's body lying in the middle of the floor alongside several other corpses. Seeing the wounds on Henry, Chris assumes he was killed by the Chinese agent. Sensing someone following, Chris quickly hides in a corner and suddenly attacks Feng from behind as he enters. Without a word, the two charge at each other fiercely. They are evenly matched, trading blows wildly. During the fight, Chris pulls out a knife to attack, but Feng manages to dodge each time. Both have reasons to hate the other. Feng accuses Chris of killing his men, while Chris believes Feng killed his brother. Each carries their own pain, their own grudge, so neither is willing to back down. After fighting until tired, Feng starts wanting to talk, to resolve things rationally. But before he can lower his tone, a group of French mercenaries suddenly bursts in. Feng quickly pulls the pin on the mine Chris has in hand, causing them to panic and flee in disarray. However, Feng predicts they will surely return to attack. Chris doesn't believe it at first, but less than a minute later, bullets rain in from outside. The two hastily close the door and find cover. Feng primes mines. Chris throws them out to counterattack. After a period of intense fighting and several near-death experiences, the French mercenary group finally retreats. Now, Feng points his gun at Chris, demanding he reveal the real reason he is here. Chris replies bluntly, "If I'm dead, you'll never know the truth." Unable to extract anything, Feng has to concede. They step outside but find Chris's vehicle completely destroyed, unusable. With no other option, the two decide to leave on foot. Before leaving, they blow up the base to erase any traces. On the way, Chris tells Feng the whole truth. Owen is the one behind everything. He not only kidnapped Professor Chang, but also killed Henry. Now, Chris wants both to rescue the hostages and avenge his brother. Realizing they share the same goal, Feng and Chris decide to cooperate, becoming a team. At the oil refinery, Owen has brought Professor Chang. He and his group occupy the place, trying to restart the refinery system to seize the resources. But none of them know how to operate it because they lack the access codes. Helpless, they are forced to drag Professor Chang out for questioning. Owen says that the people who used to work here, his friends, died without receiving anything. He came just to take back what belonged to them. No longer wanting to argue, Owen demands the professor reveal the code to start the refinery. However, she refuses and explains it's a complex process. Owen doesn't let Professor Chang finish explaining. They immediately drag out her son to threaten her. Seeing her son facing death, she confesses the USB is in her bag, but she doesn't remember where she left the bag. At this point, her son speaks up. The USB is currently in the bag of Mei, Feng's daughter. In another development, Chris has brought Feng and his daughter to the village where he lives, a sanctuary for many orphans. Here, the two men, former agents, suddenly become just like stage performers. They compete in clowning around, making jokes that have the children roaring with laughter. It turns out they once dreamed of becoming comedians, but were bound by the responsibilities of agents. Now, having the chance to be true to themselves, they savor every moment. While the two are enjoying themselves, Professor Chang's phone, forgotten in May's bag, suddenly rings. May answers, but the other end is silent. Unbeknownst to them, it is Owen tracing the call's signal to pinpoint their location. While the children are having dinner, Chris and Feng step outside to talk privately. Chris hands Feng a notebook May left behind. Thinking May is Feng's girlfriend, Chris is surprised to hear Feng admit May is his biological daughter. Their father-daughter relationship isn't great. Chris encourages him saying nothing is impossible to mend. But Feng sighs. You don't have a family, you wouldn't understand. A battle on the battlefield isn't necessarily as complicated as matters at home. Chris also opens up about his past. He used to be an agent with his father and brother, on a mission on the road of death. Although his father refused, Chris convinced him to take the job. As a result, his father died right before his eyes. Since then, he carried the burden of guilt, left the organization, and came to this land to live in seclusion. The conversation is interrupted when Feng hears a strange noise. Sensing danger, he immediately signals May to take the children and hide. As predicted, Owen's henchmen have laid an ambush. The target is the USB in May's bag. Chris and Feng split up, each heading in a different direction to hunt down the enemy. Although the attackers are equipped with modern weapons, they are no match for the two seasoned former agents. With their superior combat skills, they easily take down the enemies one by one. When the villagers discover the attack, they don't just stand by. Even though they are just civilians, they grab sticks and machetes to stand up and protect their village. Amidst the chaos, one of the attackers pulls out a grenade, threatening to blow everything up if the bag isn't handed over. Without hesitation, Chris rushes into the house, grabs May's bag, and throws it outside. May cries out, trying to stop him, blaming him for handing over something so important. But Chris just says one thing. This is my home. These people are my family. I will do anything to protect them. At this point, Chris finally asks May what's in the bag. May sighs and says that USB contains the activation code for the oil flow system. If they get it, they can divert hundreds of millions of cubic meters of oil elsewhere. The oil will go through pipelines straight to the sea, pouring into giant ships waiting there. If that happens, this will be the largest oil heist in history. They must stop Owen at all costs. But how can they break into the refinery? Chris looks at Feng and calmly says, "Don't worry, I've got my tools." It's unclear where Chris got it from, but he suddenly brings out a massive tanker truck. May asks to join, arguing she knows the terrain there well and can be helpful to the two men. However, Feng doesn't want his daughter risking her life. He tells her to stay, promising he will come back for her. Knowing further argument is futile, May temporarily agrees. Chris and Feng immediately get in the truck and speed towards the refinery like an arrow. But May has no intention of staying put. As soon as they are out of sight, she immediately takes a vehicle from the village and secretly follows them. On the other side, having obtained the USB, Owen forces Professor Chang to reactivate the refinery system, starting to pump oil onto the giant ships waiting offshore. According to calculations, pumping all the oil will take 24 hours. Assigning the task of guarding the professor and her son to his subordinates, he declares that after getting the oil, he will eliminate both of them to silence them. As Chris and Feng approach the refinery, the guards spot them and immediately raise the alarm. The soldiers use heavy weapons, firing relentlessly, but Feng doesn't flinch. He drives the giant tanker, smashing through barriers, crashing through all obstacles, charging straight into the refinery yard like a rampaging steel beast. Without hesitation, both jump out of the truck and charge into battle. However, being inside an oil refinery where a single spark could cause everything to explode, neither side dares to use guns. The battle must be close combat. Feng somersaults and leaps between beams like an acrobat. Chris uses a giant pipe both as a bridge for Feng to move around and to sweep away Owen's henchmen. The perfect coordination between the two leaves the henchmen utterly overwhelmed. Finally, they break into the control center, where Professor Chang and her son are being held. Feng throws a knife towards the guard. Although he dodges it, he is distracted. Chris immediately swings a fire extinguisher, hitting him squarely on the head. Feng rushes to rescue the professor and her son, but it's not over yet. The bald guy gets up, clearly not an easy opponent. Even though Feng and Chris use all their martial arts moves, the guy skillfully dodges. When close combat proves ineffective, all three switch to a gunfight. But after a while, they run out of ammo. The bald guy still holds a machine gun, hunting the two like a cat playing with mice. Chris cleverly signals, then stands up to draw his attention. He shouts, "You're out of ammo. Time for you to log out." At that moment, Feng attacks the guy from behind. Both men crash through the glass door. Chris leaves Feng to deal with the bald guy, while he immediately chases after Owen, who is now fleeing towards the demilitarized zone. If he reaches it, he will likely escape. But all vehicles in the area have been taken by Owen. Chris has no means to pursue. Just when he's desperate, May suddenly appears in Chris's old beat-up car. Although the car looks like it's about to fall apart, it's better than nothing. The two immediately set off. Detecting the pursuit, Owen activates the defensive systems mounted on his vehicle, firing continuously towards them. Chris instructs May to swerve continuously to dodge the bullets. Thanks to her incredible driving skills, they narrowly escape disaster. Meanwhile, in the control center, Feng is still fighting fiercely with the bald guy. The battle reaches its climax. Finally, Feng decides on a surprising tactic. He activates the fire suppression system. But the bald guy remains unharmed amidst the sea of foam. With no other choice, Feng dives into the foam, lying in wait. When the guy appears, he suddenly swings a binding rope, catches his legs, and spins him around. Feng lets him crash hard against a metal frame, instantly logging him out. No time to save state. Having dealt with the bald guy, Feng immediately goes to the professor and her son to ask them to shut down the refinery's operating system. However, Professor Chang reveals that Owen had previously destroyed the USB. Stopping the system is now impossible. Meanwhile, Owen, noticing Chris following him, decides not to take the main road, but turns onto a shortcut through the rugged mountains. With his specialized off-road vehicle, this poses no difficulty for him. Conversely, Chris and May only have a normal car, completely unsuitable for this treacherous terrain. Nevertheless, May insists on trusting her incredible driving skills. The consequences come unexpectedly fast. The car loses control, flips over multiple times, and ends up as a pile of scrap metal on the mountainside. Luckily, they have great fortune. Thanks to ancestral blessings, the two miraculously survive. Just then, Feng arrives in the massive tanker truck like a savior. However, the enemy is too far ahead, and the giant truck is too cumbersome to catch up. As they are about to cross the border into the demilitarized zone, meaning they are close to escaping safely, Feng cannot just watch. He suddenly boosts the truck's thrusters, deciding on a life-or-death gamble. Upon seeing Owen's convoy, Feng doesn't hesitate, ramming straight into one of their fuel tankers. The collision causes the tanker to explode like a bomb, collapsing, setting off a chain reaction of explosions among the other vehicles in a domino effect. A horrific scene, smoke and fire engulf the entire border area. Owen's nearby vehicle is also caught in the blast. He luckily survives, but his driver has been roasted. In a panic, he pulls the driver's body out, takes the wheel, and speeds off to escape. Feng continues the pursuit, but the giant tanker, moving too fast, gets its wheels stuck deep in the sand. Feng struggles with all his might just to control it. The brakes fail, the truck can't stop. The only option is to ram straight into Owen's vehicle. The two vehicles hurtle towards the cliff edge. In the end, Owen meets his fate, dying instantly. Feng and May luckily survive, but are battered and bruised. Hair messy, clothes torn. While struggling to get up, an old family photo falls out of Feng's torn pocket. May is stunned when she sees the photo. In that moment, she finally understands why her father was always absent. He hadn't abandoned her. He was doing the work of an unsung hero. Though far from home, Feng always carried the image of his daughter and family in his heart. That's men for you. Not good at expressing affection verbally, but always keeping what's important in their hearts. In that moment, May no longer blames her father. She throws her arms around Feng. Just as the two are sharing a touching moment like a scene from a Korean drama, Chris suddenly appears, grabbing Feng's leg, provoking unexpected laughter. Seeing he's still alive, both Feng and May are overjoyed and quickly pull him up from the cliff edge. Having just escaped death, Chris immediately declares humorously, "I'm single, clean, no STDs, applying to be your son-in-law." It's unknown if Feng nodded, but with a potential son-in-law who's skilled in combat and loves kids like this, surely no father could refuse. The movie has come to an end here. How do you guys feel? Leave a comment right below this video. See you brothers in the newest videos.